more than 200 crazy courses.
Hey, this looks interesting. I know some people that play it, and I know a friend who recommended it. They say variety is the spice of life, so maybe this won't be so bad. What kind of place is this? My queen. But I keep getting my ass kicked. I feel like I'm playing Dark Souls. Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing Dr. Robotnik's Ring Racers created by the CANT crew. Now, up until this point, I've been covering games that I've had a massive interest in, but a goal for this channel is to try and branch out into other games that I have not played before. This is not to pigeonhole myself for content, but also trying to see if other games that people might have recommended it to me are good. And first off for this change is Ring Racers. Before we get into my journey, I wanted to have a brief history on what this game existence means and an overview of it. I'm not a huge Sonic lore buff and I don't really keep up with fan projects, but I know someone who is!
Montag, why the fuck did you make me wear this?
Man, we
wrote this. I agree to this, but I really don't want to
fucking continue it, please.
Montag,
please.
Listen. Sonic Roboblast 2 is a total conversion fan game created by Sonic Team Jr. in the Doom Legacy engine, and is one of the longest ongoing Sonic fan projects and Doom mods to date. Originally starting development in 1998 in the Games Factory before moving into the Doom engine, building upon the mod Sonic the Hedgehog Doom, over the course of 25 years it has evolved from just a simple Doom mod into a full game. The game itself can be seen as an alternate take on the Sonic series if its transition to 3D kept the design philosophies of its 2D predecessors. With a mostly fully realized campaign, 6 playable characters as well as multiplayer co-op, racing, and deathmatch, the game built up an enormous community that has made several mods of characters, maps, and even gameplay styles thanks to Doom's familiar modding tools. In 2011, modder Chaos064, along with several other members of the SRB2 community, created SRB2 Riders, a mod aiming to replicate the gameplay and levels of Sonic Riders within the engine. This mod, while initially being focused on Riders, also featured a game mode that replicated the gameplay of Mario Kart 64. The Mario Kart mod became so popular in its own right that it formed the creation of the CANT crew dev team, and on November 16th, 2018 came the release of Sonic Roboblast 2 CANT. This mod gained an immense popularity with its intense races, battles, and the massive amount of community-created characters and courses to play in. However, CANT ran in SRB2's 2.1 codebase, and CANT crew would soon begin migrating the game to 2.2. In November 2020, on the SRB2 message board, they would begin to show off some experimental new features, items, mechanics, and systems for what would be classed as version 2, which led to some community speculation and some mixed reception to the ideas that they were proposing. Later in 2022, CANT crew would announce that SRB2 CANT's version 2 had evolved to the point of a full-blown sequel, Dr. Robotnik's Ring Racers. The game eventually released on April 24th, 2024. No longer just a simple mod, no longer just a Mario Kart-like with a Sonic skin, but a full-blown game with an identity all of its own. The game released to a mixed but positive reception initially, with criticism mainly being levied towards the game's mandatory first-time tutorial and odd unlock requirements for modes and content, which has since been amended and improved with subsequent updates. The other criticism, primarily by CANT veterans, is how heavy a departure from CANT's simple pick-up-and-play nature it was. Regardless, however, the game still fosters a very tight community dedicated to making new content for the game. So what's the story? Most Sonic games, even the smallest ones, tend to have a plotline to them. This game takes place in an alternate timeline following the events of Sonic Adventure 2. Series antagonist Dr. Eggman, having helped Sonic and his friends to save the world from his grandfather's plot to destroy it, has recently begun to reconsider his evil deeds. Having always used captured animals to power his machines, in his first step to turning over a new leaf, he collaborates with Tails to create a new power source. The High Voltage Ring, an unstable but highly powerful ring created from over 80,000 rings combined. And so in order to test this new power source, they create the Ring Racer, a specialized go-kart that utilizes its power and hosts a tournament to see who can master them. With over 60 characters across the Sonic series as well as Sega's other properties, the race is now on to see who can master the Ring Racer, and the 200 plus tracks spread across multiple cups.
One thing I want to interject quickly is that even with all this context being given with the story and the creation of the game, it still feels weird that this is my first Sonic game. Why I haven't touched anything before this, even any of the mainline Sonic stuff back on the Genesis, but maybe there was just something about Sonic that never clicked with me? But regardless, that's now all in the past. And before we go over the somewhat in-depth nature of racing and its movement, I wanted to go over a few of the smaller aspects that are easier to sum up and review. First, the audio design, and specifically the sound effects and the carts. I love these. I love the feedback of just having the most basic Sonic sounds being used present, using rings, items, and carts to have sound bites of the characters making the game feel bouncy and fun, while also having edge of competitive bragging. And while I'm playing as Katsune Teto for this footage, it's been loads of fun getting to hear what all these other characters have to say. So I would say probably my favorite is Eggman, just because it's a giant egg racing in a cart. And next is the soundtrack. Be ready for a great mix of tracks from Sonic games, tracks from other games, and original songs crafted for the experience. While I'm personally a fan of a lot of the older generation Sonic game music from Genesis and Game Gear, I think some bangers they have me keep coming back. I can't choose one specifically, but know that all these tracks are pretty much bangers throughout. They're usually taken throughout multiple generations of Sonic games, and are really good to put on playlists for either studying or working like I do. There isn't going to be any clunkers unlike... On the visual side, I am blown away with not only the track layouts, but the color palette chosen for the variety of tracks represented within all the courses. Many stages are either built from the ground up as references to other Sonic games and their stages, or taken from other games' bonus stages in order to fit the racing environment. One of my favorite early game tracks is Popcorn Workshop within the Spring Cup. While the stage itself is fun to race around in, I really like how it's a reference to the Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop, where a minigame would play on a separate screen while waiting for your snack in Japan vending machines. And with it being focused within the inner machinery to make the popcorn, it's a blast to play and a great introductory course to many of the game's mechanics. But even playing this right now, there's a ton of hard work being put into bringing these stages to life, and massive props have to be given to the artists that made these stages vibrant. Definitely one of my favorite aspects of Ring Racers. But now, it's on to the actual race. Let's get to the starting line. To first start out, your movement in Ring Racers seems very similar to other kart racers within the past. You have normal movement with accelerate, brake, reverse, drifting, and a dedicated drifting boost. But what distinguishes this movement from something like Mario Kart is within the finer details that help you blast through tracks with this course like this. Shit looks like my small intestine. But drifting, for example, regardless of what character you are using, how early or late you start a drift will determine the radius of movement that you can use to help get around hairpin turns or without the loss of a boost. And with the addition of rings that will be explained in a moment, this will increase your handling and speed within the track. So here, there might be a turn that comes up that I start the drift before I am able to snake my way around the track. If there's a speed boost that is gained from it, I think that's great, but control is the name of the game when it comes to these kinds of turns. Even in the manual, it can be recommended to tap the brake to sharpen the turn even further to keep yourself from veering off the track into the dust. This then brings me to character choice. Overall, it's mainly down to the personal preference and what character you have to use with the stats that take up in the 3x3 cube within each section. But here's another interesting layout: boosting. So, many of the items within this game do provide a boost of some kind, but there is a key difference between the boost to speed and the weight split up to be what classes you pick. To compare two racers, Sonic and Eggman, Sonic is placed at the top right, which is super light, better with boosting and longevity of them, and tight drifts, but it takes a while to get speed. Conversely, Eggman in the lower left is better with acceleration and building drift boots, but is a lot heavier in turning and weight. From my experience, since I always stand my girl Katsune Teto, I technically picked a character with lightweight with balanced speed and acceleration ratio with good handling without going overboard into any specialties. And in short, pick your favorite within a test track or the playground and you'll be good to go. And with the multitude of mods that you can probably download, you can probably play as whatever you want.
Rings are the central mechanic that Ring Racers is built around, and they are all over every track, in large swaths, in long strips, and boxes with set amounts. Rings function as both your health and a means of giving your kart speed. By itself, your kart will accelerate quite slowly, but if you slurp up a couple of rings, your kart will take off immediately, as well as give you a boost in your handling. You can hold up to 20 rings at any time, and if you take on more than you can carry, your kart will immediately use them to further build speed. On top of spending your rings, you also lose them from bumping into others and from taking damage. If you're not careful and hit 0 rings, you become vulnerable to spinning out every time you bump someone else, eventually entering into ring debt. And God forbid, if you get hit again when you're at a maximum deficit of minus 20, Keeping rings on you at all times is a necessity, not just to win, but to stay in the game at all. However, just because you're out of rings doesn't render you completely defenseless, as it allows you to perform the Insta-Whip, a melee attack that you can use to smack players around or steal their items. More on this later. If you absolutely need a burst of speed above all else, you can also perform a ring bail, blasting you off at high speed and immediately expending all your rings, but putting you in the danger zone. This is purely an all or nothing move. Use it at your own risk. Starting out, compared to a typical racing game where you start immediately upon countdown, Ring Races instead uses a system called Position, where you can freely move around before the real countdown begins. If you cross the line too early, you'll fault out, and you'll be held in purgatory before being let back onto the track. You can use this time to find rings, items in the starting area, or to mess with other players before the race. First person across the starting line will receive a powerful starting boost to immediately establish a front run for the other opponents to chase behind. Every Cup of Grand Prix contains 5 tracks. Across each track, there are checkpoints that you cross mid-lap. Depending on your position when crossing the checkpoint, you'll earn an amount of AXP. This goes into the roulette system, which we'll touch on in a moment, and also functions as your score in the GP. You want to try and be in the lead as much as you can throughout the whole course for the best score, but this also means that if you performed well throughout, but come up just short of first place on the track, you could still pull ahead of your competition overall. And if you can, also try to finish the race with a full stockpile of rings for both an extra life and a better rank. Between every 2 tracks, you'll enter a bonus stage called Prison Break. This puts you on a single-player version of a battle map with a number of these prison eggs throughout the stage, and you have to destroy them all within a time limit that replenishes for every egg you pop. If you manage to pop every egg, you'll be granted an extra life. This also factors into your score at the end of the GP, so try your best to pop every one of them.
The Prison Break, from my beginner's perspective, is a nice change of pace that rewards positioning, and you can take a break from the hectic, somewhat bouncy nature of the rest of the races. My favorite is Tricircle Marina Zone because of its chill theme. I would just come back here just to see the skybox, to be honest. But what is a fast-paced kart racer without a little bit of silliness? This is where the multitude of items you can acquire during a race can come into play. Each of these can be split up into 3 different categories: offensive, defensive, and speed. And while many of the mechanics have been unique so far, many of the items here are still comparable to the other racing games similar to Mario Kart. I'll still pick up a few unique items for you to get a feel for it, but all of them could be compared to the contemporaries.
For offensive items, Orbinaut, a spike ball projectile that can be bounced off of walls, usually comes in packs of 1 or 4. Jaws, a homing rocket that will usually follow opponents but can be thrown off course with effective driving, usually comes as a single or a double. The Ball Hog, you gain a limited amount of bombs to throw at opponents in front of you in an arcing motion. You can throw these in single shots or in multiple shots at once. However, if you overcharge it, you'll use all the remaining bombs you have to hurl yourself forward in a tumbling speed boost. The Self-Propelled Bomb, or SPB. This is most comparable to the Blue Shell and only shows up if the leader has a very significant lead. However, instead of just simply killing the player in first place when it's used, it matches that player's top speed. While chasing the leader, it also drops high-speed rings that other players can go through to catch up. If the player lags below the speed limit, the bomb explodes. However, if another player also takes over first, then it'll switch targets. It can also be destroyed with a lightning shield if you have it.
Oh, these are pretty cool bananas.
I don't even know why I included this here. You know what this does, you freak. Landmine and Proximity Mine. Traps that stick to the trap and explode after coming into radius or direct contact with them. Think of this as the more dangerous banana. Drop Target. Send the player bouncing back like a bounce panel on a pinball machine. Doesn't damage them, but is highly disorienting and gets more powerful with each bounce. Bubble, Fire, and Lightning Shield. Each of these shields can give you a boost when discarded or used to reflect and destroy projectiles. If you get hit, you'll still spin out, but you won't also lose any rings, which is very nice.
For speed, we have items like the Super Ring. This gives the player 20 rings and also gives them a small punch in momentum. It can come in stacks of 1 or 10 depending on your position in the race. Sneakers. These provide a boost of speed as well as give you a very small period of invincibility. You'll usually be using these to go through tripwire shortcuts on the track. Rocket Sneakers. These give you multiple boosts on command while slowly depleting over time. You can either use these gradually or choose to use them all at once to get a massive boost in speed. Personally, I appreciate how all of the items, like Mario Kart before it, actually make full use of recontextualizing items and enemies from the Sonic universe into items for the racetrack. And honestly, a lot better than some previous official Sonic racing items have done. Also, getting hit by a lot of these items is brutal. Never have I seen a racing game with fighting game hit stop, but I'm all for it. When you pop an item box, the roulette begins to spin, but you have full control on where the roulette stops, so you can pick the best item for the situation that you're in. The roulette starts slow at the beginning and then gets way faster as the race progresses, but it slows down if you fall behind. Also, compared to position-based balancing of items in other kart races, your roulette pool is affected by your distance from the lead. leader. It is also affected by your total EXP in the race. If you've been performing well throughout and then suddenly make a mistake that leaves you in the back of the pack, your roulette will start to pull items that can help you recover your position. Conversely, this also means that you can't hang back for a whole race and expect to pull an invincibility to mow through the pack and wing. Mario Kart sandbagging will not help you here. The leader will also get a unique set of defensive items to try and help them maintain the front run that they have as much as possible. Things like the stone shoe and the Toxo Mister usually tend to appear here. Item boxes also get replaced with ring boxes for a little bit immediately after getting popped. Hit one of these and try to stop the roulette on jackpot, and the rings will begin to pour into your engine to speed you up, with the payout amount being affected both by what you landed on and your distance from the lead.
But after all that we've explained with the gameplay loop, I now want to go into my personal opinion. What do I think of ring racers, and should it be the new gaming pastime that lets you get to the completion both? This game will break you in more ways than one. Okay, full disclosure. This is coming from someone with the single player experience, and I've yet to jump into the trenches of online, so I'll likely make a follow-up to it at some point once I do. Okay, I will be the first to admit that I do not play racing games in my pastime. I play story games, first-person games, horror games. So, to touch a kart racer after my last interaction was with Garfield Kart or Mario Kart 8, this is like throwing you into a volcano expecting you to swim. Initially, I did start off on relaxed difficulty with the first 3 cups, before shifting to intense and replaying them. And in that time I have been writing the script, I have been mentoring by Squealy, I swear I have not felt more of a boiling rage and hatred for some of those gaming sessions since I played Dark Souls 3 6 years ago. There are moments that make you think on your feet, like your rivals overtaking you, getting rid of trick items, and using Spring's trick correctly, which are great. I love these moments. And that being said, this criticism is not coming for the core gameplay loop to change. Ring Racer's core gameplay loop is excellent and has me constantly engaged to learn tricks, items, and new tracks that I have been unlocking even while editing this video. But instead, my issue lies within some of the decisions about teaching players about its mechanics and some of the map placement along cups. It's still okay to put a notice on the website that this is a challenging racer that isn't necessarily pick up to play, but I still feel like there's some missing communication for those coming in without prior knowledge of where the game stands today. Hence, my experience.
Also, as someone who has been playing since SRB2K, and from day one of Ring Racer's release, someone who has played the game to 100% completion and loved it, someone who has played all of the released candidates for this newest build, I can still identify some things that could be changed to better onboard new players. I wouldn't want the current tutorial to be scrapped. There's so much love and attention poured into these levels, especially the dialogue between Tails and Eggman. I just feel there's still something missing. While I may have been able to help mentor Montag in areas of how to play the game and understand its mechanics better, not everyone is going to have someone in a similar position to be able to help ease them in or to diffuse frustrations from mechanical misunderstanding. Here's something. Why is the spring and trick panels tutorial locked behind unlocking the 9th cup, when trick panels, arguably the mechanic that easily trips new players up, shows up as soon as Mirage Saloon in Cup 4, albeit half optional, and then is a mandatory mechanic near the end of Bronze Lake in Cup 5? Unlocking it when you unlock the Goggles Cup makes sense, since the first track, 765 Stadium, has said springs immediately. But as for doing this in a regular unlock order, this feels like an error. If anything, why are the tutorials spaced out to unlock nearly every 2 cups rather than every cup? Or at the very least, just before these mechanics show up? I think a good way that this could be remedied is if alongside the current tutorial, when players reach a new track with a new element that they're not familiar with, for example the trick panels, give the player a visual of what to expect with the mechanic, and the choice to have a hands-on tryout of said mechanic before being thrown into a race. I feel like this would alleviate some stress of newer players, especially players who have jumped into the deep end from the start, while also still being fairly hands-off, as well as being a toggleable refresher for returning players.
To give praise in what Squealy just described within the Springs tutorial, there is a moment right before its conclusion where the game teaches you that tricking off of trick panels doesn't need to be perfect every time. You don't need to wait for the slices to come together, you're allowed to do the trick prematurely, and sometimes it might even be the better option to set you on the right path. While this area itself can feel like trial and error first when I was recording, it does a remarkable job at reinforcing what it states through this approach, that error sometimes is the best option. Another proposed idea that we have both come up with is doing a balance check of certain maps within certain cups so that newer players, like myself, can have an easier time adapting to the game's introduced mechanics. While there is some resolve around adjusting where tutorials will appear, switching some of the stages around to be more accommodating for the mistakes either in drifting or unique mechanics that should be accounted for should be corrected. Having communication with a test build to show possible track balance with the feedback of the community could alleviate some of these growing pains for the ones joining us now. So, with that, Ring Racers is one of the most innovating racing games that I've ever played. It expands on a formula that demands your attention, that makes you think how good a kart racer can be, but also is one of the most unforgiving games that I have ever played. I respect the dev team for innovating on the idea that they started many years ago, and I hope that it continues to grow the community more, but I might have to step off this ride temporarily just because I'm getting kart sick, even with my beloved Katsune Teto.
The mouse still has a ways to go, but it has been fun seeing them get gradually more and more accustomed to the game, coming to really understand and appreciate all the game's little systems that I think really makes this game stand out on its own among other kart races. And I can't wait to see how Montag will fare in the online races and battles. That's a huge can of worms in itself to bust open. But alas, all things in moderation, one thing at a time.
But next week, I'm going to turn the competitive angle down a notch to talk about a game where you take cool photos. But until then, good luck with the track racers. Thank you for watching, thank you for Squealy for coming on today to help me with almost everything in this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care!
Why am I at a hospital?
You ain't from Michigan if you never done this before.